Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined by our professional of the year, Dr. Grant Venerable. How are you today?
I'm in great shape today.
Oh, well,
how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. And please introduce yourself to our listeners to start. It's been a while, I feel like.
Okay. This is Grant Venerable, Grant D. Venerable II. And my father was the senior. And here I am on the desert, about 2,000 feet elevation above Joshua Tree National Monument and just north of Palm Springs. So I am in the Yucca Valley, pondering a few things. My mind over the week drifted back to my experience in education, because it seems to be such a widely debated topic now, and I need to add some more background for that topic. So, with nothing more specific than that in mind, I'm just going to wade out there in some areas that are all related. And so the first words I want to say are the word is epistemology and ontology. And you may recognize anyone that has had any acquaintanceship with scriptural literature, especially around the Bible. The New Testament is filled with what they call epistles, and that's from the Latin epistula, which means letter. And many of the letters written in the New Testament were by the disciples of Jesus and by the Apostle Paul. Another word that is related is called ontology, O-N-T-O-L-O-G-Y. And ontology has to do with what's real. It is the study of being, the study of what is, what really exists, while epistemology is the study of knowledge itself. So that you see, those two words are very interlinked in the whole educational enterprise, whether you're in preschool or college or graduate school. Those two areas must be interlinked in the young person's minds so that they have a very good foundation for mastering everything else that's expected of them in a higher education. Unfortunately, when education is discussed, it's mainly criticized. And that comes from it's not being discussed in well-defined, what we call rigorously precise terms. And that's what fails in the news about education, about learning and teaching, which goes way, 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 way back. Further back than anyone can imagine. In the Western world, it goes back to the beginnings in the desert of Palestine and Judea, and with the roots of the Jewish religion, which evolved the Christian religion, and which out of both of those came Islam, the Muslim religion. And those are the main underpinnings in the Western world that ultimately led up to how we teach today. It's back 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. You've got to evaluate the effectiveness of knowledge transmission. And for the rabbis, it was translating their knowledge or transferring it, their knowledge of God, the Creator, and then that involved educationally in the knowledge of reality, of everything that a civilized society, that its citizens need to master in order to live successful life. But what I was getting at was education and the need for the conversation about education among not only educators, but those in the legislative, executive, judicial domains to use clear, well-defined language,
Mm-hmm.
that they define a word if there's any question about it, but in general, to define terms. I talked to my linguist, a professor friend, just yesterday evening about that very thing. And so that's what I'm proceeding on the basis of, well, continuing on the basis of today. I want to touch on the fields of art, science, education, and language, and particularly my education in chemistry and the role of those terms, epistemology and ontology, in learning. But for me, the learning of chemistry, particularly from 11th grade in high school onward through graduate school. I wanted to read some basic defining terms and concepts to get us going, because I haven't really discussed this yet. I think it'll be important to many of our viewers. And I want to define race as it is used in the social science, political arenas. And so I ask questions. What is race? Is race a political idea? Is race the phenotype of a person? Pheno meaning what appears to the observer. What does that person look like? What is their physical phenotypic description? What is that person's nationality? All those terms are conflated with race. Sometimes people will want to determine race, but they go around the mulberry bush and ask, well, I mean, what is your nationality? And nationality is not the same thing as race. It's really where your citizenship is, what nation. And so I'm back in California, and I often tell people I'm a Californian, and that's my nationality. Well, it's my state nationality, but I'm an American citizen. And then what is true race? Namely, biologically, what is race? And what is ethnicity, which is also conflated with race. But ethnicity refers to one's cultural behavior in the context graphically. So that defines ethnicity. I'm going to take on the terms we hear about. Melanin. We've all heard of melanin is a dark biopolymer in chemistry that's found in skin, hair, feathers, scales, and some internal membranes. Mm-hmm. So when I say scales, I'm talking about reptiles and fish, things like that. And then melanin is formed by the progressive oxidation. That's a chemical process, oxidation of a colorless substance and an amino acid, namely. And another, the amino acid is tyrosine. Mm-hmm. And is oxidized in the presence of the copper-containing enzyme tyrosinase, which activates the synthesis of melanin in the epidermal outer layer of the skin. The end product is a black, highly insoluble pigment. So if you were to see pure melanin, that's what it looks like. A black polymeric substance. And there's two types of melanin that go into making skin color. The dark brown to black melanin is an insoluble substance called eumelanin, namely EU in front of the word melanin. But you most usually see EU it's from the Greek for good. For example, if you go to a memorial service and the eulogy is presented, so it is the words of the goodness of that person during life. But melanin also has a eumelanin form. And then there's a yellow to reddish brown melanin called pheo melanin. And they have different physical and chemical properties. The quickly here, the neuromelanin is a third melanin that gives us the word neurology. It's a dark brown pigment that differs chemically from the epidermal melanin pigments, namely the pheomelanin and the eumelanin, but it arises biogenetically from the oxidation of dopamine to a precursor of both norepinephrine and epinephrine. Those are adrenaline-related epinephrines. And we've all heard of adrenaline. It's made by the adrenal glands. And it's made, this neuromelanin is made through its precursor, tyrosine. And there's a late researcher in Berkeley that suggested that neuromelanin may reside in the internal organs of mammalian bodies, as well as in the brain central nervous system. Well, we all become experts when we go to the butcher, and the old fashioned where you look in and you see the meats that the butcher has to offer. And some meats are more light white meat, like chicken meat. And then you see dark meat, reddish dark meat, livers, kidneys, internal organs like that. And that's because of the neuromelanin that they contain.
Yeah.
But you can't see those in people because they're inside of the body. So, but people do exhibit their melanin in their skin. And while albino individuals lack dermal and dermal-related melanin, they probably enjoy a full complement of neuromelanin. While compelled to operate under certain disadvantages, such as extreme susceptibility to sunburn and progressive deterioration of eyesight due to the absence of melanin in the skin and eye, albinos are nevertheless viable individuals, while there are those who would deny that melanin is a vital pigment in living organisms. The data tell us that through the phenomenon of albinism. So the next point related to that is that melanin has the paradoxical role of protecting living organisms from, even while integrating them with, the sunlight, the solar biosphere. Perhaps melanin holds the key to the unity of humankind. That is, while its presence or lack thereof assures the most visibly obvious aspect of our human diversity, namely skin color.
Yeah. It
is this apparent diversity per se that affirms the unity of our species. And so that takes us to a property of dermal melanin in all normally pigmented people, when coupled with the presence in lighter skinned peoples of progressively less amounts of melanin and progressively greater amounts of something called glutathione. Now, you may have heard of glutathione in other
I have. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah.
But the glutathione confirms a common dark-skinned origin for all humans, most likely Africa. In other words, the synthesis of dark skin is a biochemical mandate, but the synthesis of light skin is not. Sounds strange, but brown skin is always the normal outcome for human beings unless counteracted by something else. And that's glutathione, that particular isomer of glutathione, which inhibits melanin production. The fact that it is never the other way around, that is, white or light skin, which is the lack of melanin, as the standard result, getting chemically disrupted to produce brown or black skin. This is significant. Such a remarkable observation enables us to apply the poetic observation that but for the impact of glutathione, every white or light person is really a black person, only with less melanin. This invalidates all racial classification schemes based on skin color. All humans belong to one melanin-containing race, biologically the same, except for the way the sunlight hits their skin and a few other descriptive things. So we get to the background of race in Western society. We use race as though we know exactly what it is. I would say that our national confusion over the meaning of race is a chief source of our race problems. Our confusion drives the making of foggy-headed national policy and relations. But race is really a cover, a subterfuge for something else. Years of examining the issue have forced the conclusion that the subterfuge is deliberate. Actually, there's no great mystery as to why this should be. Were race ever debunked, demystified, and clarified, what we call the privileged white minority, the PWM, rulers would risk losing the most effective instrument of social control ever devised in the Western world. The fraud that is embodied in all our myths about race, no matter how innocent, are indispensable to keeping not merely the color suspected, but even more, the maintenance of race as a social organizing tool keeps the white masses in their place under the watchful surveillance of the ruling privileged white minority class. Race stands as the final, if imaginary, barrier between the people of the United States and the realization of their full humanity. How did things come to this sorry state of affairs? How did it happen? This mass illusion that there are actual psychobiological subdivisions of the human group, that each subdivision is differentiated by such physical features as skin color, hair texture, and body type, and the physical features of a population actually predict or determine the behaviors of the individuals who are members of the population. So one of the most confusing aspects of the whole race business is the widespread false belief that race, and hence racism, have always been part of the human behavioral landscape, as though that justified racist behavior. Of course, it doesn't justify it, but it hasn't. Race is an idea, a biological difference that implies race superiority and inferiority, evolved rather recently in human history, just since the 15th century. But are there not true racial differences? among human heritage? The answer is yes. But
Yeah.
the differences are so superficial and of no consequence in establishing one group as biologically distinct from another group. Where there's such a distinction, so-called crossbreeding between the races would not be possible. This means that the term interracial marriage is an amusing misnomer. Scientifically speaking, no human marriage can be interracial. If interracial marriage has any meaning at all, that meaning resides in the political arena, where words are used as weapons in skirmishes for power.
Mm-hmm.
If it suits if it suits the political faction to refer to marriage between persons, say, of differing skin colors as interracials, it is done for the purpose of holding or gaining political advantage. And then that led to really trying to understand what race is. The scientific definition of race is a gene pool, a breeding population with a characteristic gene frequency appear in a group. All individuals who share a common gene pool belong to the same race, regardless of phenotypic appearance. When the United States becomes a truly free society, it will comprise one common gene pool, with everyone deriving at least some of their genes from that common pool. And we're almost there now,
Yeah.
interestingly enough. So I want to leave it at that there,
Yeah.
and step on to the next idea
Sure.
that I left off with on our last chat. And that was from my annual letter to my friends, written back in the winter of 1998-99, in which I was in a big change like I am
Mm-hmm.
now. And I had left my native California in 1996,
Mm-hmm.
just before the passage of Proposition 209.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to do with, at the political level, of the way the proposition was presented to the voters was, well, do you think it's fair to give advantage to people of just because they're of a different race? And it got couched in a way that most of the voters said, well, we just want good equality and merit-based decisions for admitting students to college or admitting people to jobs. So the proposition won, and California's never been the same since. It suffered a great deal because
Yeah.
they had what were called affirmative action programs that had
Mm-hmm.
been very well organized. And it caused a great scrambling up of students deciding in advance that their dark skin colorations meant they would never be able to get into a public university in California. So they began applying to
Yeah.
historically Black institutions down south.
Mm-hmm.
And it directed the population of, I'll just say, Black youngsters dropped precipitously. Now, when I was at UCLA, entering in 1960, only 3% of the 24,000 students were of African American heritage. But it was wide open still then, and there weren't laws against that got more restrictive. So there were 300 of African American identifiable youngsters at UCLA. And we were all pretty good in high school. So there wasn't a problem at that time. And UCLA became one of the truly multi-racial, multi-ethnic campuses in the United States, as well as UC Berkeley. But as the Prop 96 took hold, it tended to unexpectedly, not to me though, but to most people, those people whose ethnic groups uh, who could do well on the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, began to have a majority presence in the University of California and the state college campuses. And that was unanticipated. It was really interesting. So some campus populations became a majority of Asian youngsters, even though Asians were at that time only maybe 7% of the whole state population. So things have really been jockeyed around in the 30 years since then. But I think things are coming back to a new balance now. But we have to wait and see how that's going to happen. One of the ways that that happens is by changing the informational environment in which people live. That's precisely one reason, Jill, that your organization has podcasting, is so that a diverse population of intellectuals, say, professionals in the society, have equal access to giving podcasts on their viewpoints of the very things that we're talking about right now. So let me hip hop along to the next thoughts that I have. I looked at one of my other books that we haven't talked about. It is probably my most important book, but it is out there. It can be obtained. It's called Managing in a Five-Dimension Economy, and in which I look at the economy as having 5 functional parts to it. And we've talked about that kind of around the edges, but the most obvious part of a 5-dimension economy is the physical part, the part that we can see with our physical senses. So an economy, an economic sector has real estate, it has buildings, it has housing, it has transportation, it has equipment that we use to conduct the society and conduct the economy. It has money, it has an informational system that now has computers. We're awash in artificial intelligence and internet and computers and Zoom, such as this. And, so that's just one aspect of the economy, which I call the 5-dimensional economy. The next aspect is I'll call it the purpose, the objective of an economic sector. And in a democratic society, that is a private sector, unlike some of our fellow nations in Europe, which have a more collectivist economy, which have different names like socialist, and many countries like Great Britain and France and Scandinavian countries, they're more socialistic, although they're capitalistic as well. But there's a strong element of socialism in which the government helps to regulate what the people need. So that's how our 2 political parties get into debates, is how much socialism do you want with your capitalism. The third, aside from private sectors, like back here in the California, I see some of the major construction projects, like the Golden Gate Bridge was a massive project. Nobody had ever built a bridge that huge and that complex back in 1937. But it was built with a combination of private and public monies. So there's natural processes, which is what physics and chemistry and biology tell us about. That's what their purpose is, to study about those natural processes. The earth according to us in the natural sciences, was founded or evolved
Okay.
uh, in a great, the solar system happened and a lot of changes. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years of age.
Wow. Is it?
Now, it also depends on what you fasten yourself to in terms of your most deep beliefs. So if you hook yourself up to something called religion, and our early scriptures gave us enough information that could tell us that they could calculate, oh, the earth was created in 6 days, and all of the oceans and the dry lands, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful story. For me, it connotes something even more important than a
Yeah.
physical earth.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter. I'm just trying to make a point that it is the job of scientists to demonstrate how they know
Yeah.
the earth appeared four
Mm-hmm.
and a half billion years ago. And then life started to form in little single-celled entities, maybe uh, 3.75 billion years ago. And then that got more complex
Yeah.
until we eventually worked our way up to vertebrates like dinosaurs,
Wow.
and
Uh-huh.
mammals after the dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs had a tough time of it when a great meteoroid hit the Mediterranean Sea and made a big crater on the bottom. And all this debris went up out of the sea and spread out into the atmospheres all over the earth. And that was 65 million years ago,
Wow.
not that long ago compared to when the earth
Nope.
formed. But the dinosaurs died out. Certain amphibians were able to survive. Snakes and reptiles were able to survive. Mammals began to form and become a dominant force until primates appeared several million years ago. And then early humans, early
Mm-hmm.
Homo sapiens, around 2 million years ago. What I'm trying to suggest, or did
Yeah.
suggest in my book, Managing in a Five-Dimension Economy, and we talked about three of those dimensions. We left out the third one, which is how humans structure
Yeah.
their organizations to achieve the objectives using the physical resources they had at hand. Then there's a fourth dimension
Yeah.
called the change dimension. That
Okay.
is the dimension of creativity, human creativity. The Golden Gate Bridge came out of a tremendous creative engineering effort of applying the laws of chemistry, physics, and biology to build that bridge, which my dad, who was a young man at Caltech as a student, um, was civil engineer
Yeah.
major, and his professor was one of the consultants on that
Mm-hmm.
bridge, Professor Converse, Professor Doherty, and so the
Yeah.
professors gave them homework problems that he
Yeah.
had to deal with on creating that bridge. Now, going back to the fifth dimension in the five-dimension economy is the dimension of creative change and
Mm-hmm.
balance. There always has to maintain equilibrium. And so nature, if we could call it nature, uh, created uh, a solar system of planets, and the Earth especially, nature has balancing forces of its own.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of the biological creatures get ill, sick, or diseased, they have access to healing mechanisms in them in which they can rebalance their balance. The idea of that book is that all of the we think they're huge problems, especially now, long after I was in college, can be handled by imitating, copying, or emulating nature. how does nature solve
Mm-hmm.
problems in its own realms,
Yeah.
its own biospheres?
Yeah.
But man has not reached that level of common sense to
Mm-hmm.
figure that out. Although many of us have, and I put my understanding of that in this book. It's a big book that suggests to industry how to use that 5 element that scheme, where the fifth element means quintessence. Quintessence. That's the fifth element from Greek and Roman and Hebrew mythology. And that's the hidden thing you can't see. But it's the part of it, the force that keeps all the first 4 domains unified and in balance. It's a simple idea,
Yeah.
but as much as we see, capitalism has been allowed to drive too much of this train of life. Namely, do they go consult to how nature solves problems? No.
Mm-hmm.
They look at what the venture capitalists want to earn on their return on investment. And so they lose sight of what science already knows, that if you want your Golden Gate Bridge to stand up, you build it as though you are nature herself. And you have to invest the principles that nature has formulated over billions of years of what we in the field call evolution to solve our problems. Now, as I look at this beautiful picture of New York behind you, I think of the San Francisco skyline. There's one
Oh,
of those 60-story buildings
yeah.
that was only built like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
I
It's tall.
know. I know.
And and they discovered after people had bought units and were living in it that it was sinking on one side. And what did that imply? It implied that the engineers did not look at all of what the natural principles would have instructed them to
Yeah.
look at. Otherwise, you don't let that kind of thing happen.
It's
But
so true, right? Yep.
it looks like they have it under control now. But it took some panicked residents and a lot of engineers and of the political leaders of the Bay Area to solve it. But that's been my theme song since I started teaching chemistry in the 1970s, is understand the principles of nature. Give you one more example of that is looking at our beautiful bodies and what makes them work and stay well, stay alive. Because if any of our organ systems, our blood
Mm-hmm.
system, our nervous system were disrupted by a
Yeah.
small change in acidity
Yeah.
or alkalinity or salt composition or ratio of potassium and sodium, it leads to illness in a part of the body or all of the body. And some of the illnesses can be very malignant.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where medicine has to step back a little through its natural science roots and begin to look at their work in that way. In other words, religion has a little saying in Christianity, um, okay, we're having these issues. Okay, how would Jesus have done it?
Yeah, right?
So well, that's a good question. It's a sensible question, particularly how, Jesus is very important in your life. And in many of our lives, the laws of science are very important. So I have to ask myself constantly, starting what I learned in UCLA as a chemistry student, how would chemistry have addressed the problem balancing the pH of any living system where you have to keep the pH within a narrow range? I mean, for us, we have to keep it slightly alkaline. The pH we want is pH 7, which
Yeah.
means equal acid equal base. And there are what we call buffer systems, which are the way that that the body has built within it a ratio of certain chemicals like carbonates, bicarbonates, acids, bases, phosphates, sulfates, to keep that pH within range.
Yeah.
So if we get too much acid, these systems, these buffers kick in, and that's what the word buffer means, is to maintain the balance. And that word has come into politics, political science, where you have one country buffering the effects of two powerful nations against each other. So they use the small country as a neutral zone between these two larger countries. That's a universal idea. And it comes straight out of the natural sciences.
Sure does.
So now let me take a breath.
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, Grant, we got to go. We are out of time, too. We're over. But I know we had a little rough start there, and I just want to commend you. Thank you for this. How do we get in touch with you, sweetheart?
Well, certainly pick up my book, The Memoir. It's a 4-volume ebook called Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown. That's where we live today, the chaotic unknown. And it brings in all of these ways of thinking that I developed from the time, even before I started kindergarten, to way past finishing graduate school. And you can look online, you can see it on Barnes and Nobles, you can see it on Apple, you can see it on Amazon.com. And it's under Grant D. Venerable, Footprints, Chaotic Unknown, and you'll find it. Also, check out the website at Grant D. Venerable, PhD, all lowercase, .com. And you'll find a wealth of other information that you may want to pursue.
Thank you so much, darling. We will talk soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And
Jill.
as always, Grant, thank you for being so, let's see, Dr. Grant Venerable being so honorable. Thank you again, sweetheart. We'll talk soon, okay? Thank you, sweetie. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.